Hey, everybody. See a couple people have trickled in. Appreciate everybody's patience tonight. It's been one of those weeks. Golden Glow, what's going on, man? Good to see you dropping in. XYZED, Koenigsegg, AC, what's going on, guys? Hey, Darthside, what's up, man? Appreciate you guys hopping on. Give everybody a couple more minutes. CJ unfortunately had something pop up, so he's not going to be able to join. But I think I should be able to handle most of what we wanted to cover on my own tonight. Yeah, AC, yeah, it's got a little bit more work to knock out tomorrow, but should be a good weekend. Got to prep for these this tournament or these tournaments coming up. So yeah, local boy, yeah. CG will be back soon. He had some stuff going on, some kind of pre-weekend stuff that he had to take care of tonight. So yeah. Kind of Greg. We'll talk a little bit about Digital Breeders' Cup. I don't have a lot of detail yet. Golden Glow. I mean, you can drop some links when we start talking about tournaments, and I need to catch up with you actually a little bit, just to make sure that I'm fully educated before I start saying things I shouldn't, or so I'll catch up with you offline if you're still sticking around watching me. But obviously I'll pull that up, or mention that quickly, and then obviously we cover the new ZED tournament announcement as well. Hey, Winks. Andrew, what's going on, man? Yeah, kind of Greg. That's exactly right. Tons of tournament action. I'm not going to hit the class changes a ton tonight, but we'll we'll talk a little bit about that. But obviously the tournament coming up next week. Again, a little bit on the Digital Breeders' Cup, and then what I wanted to cover tonight was a lot of the tools, and I would have liked to have a little bit more time and have this a little more set up, but I think we'll exactly Koenigsegg. Yeah, I don't want to, for lack of a better phrase, beat a dead horse on the points change. But yeah, we'll talk about tools tonight. We'll walk through some of the big ones. Happy to provide my politically correct opinion on any tool that you want to ask about. But we'll work through that. Hey, Tussy, what's going on? So jumping right into it. My big face has been up on the screen long enough. So, big announcement. What was it, yesterday? And again, you guys have probably seen on other streams the last couple days, but I wanted to quickly cover it. So we've got the Fibonacci Cup coming up, another tournament starting on the 17th, and then qualifying for a week, and pretty similar format. Hey, Clown Assassin, what's going on? So Fibonacci Cup, we've got what will end up being kind of two smaller tournaments in the same style as the last tournament that we had. So pretty interesting. I know there was some debate, and I admitted being wrong about the grand final format last time. I do think that short runners will be a little bit more competitive, or could be a little bit more competitive if there isn't a neutral roll in the 1400 and there's a negative roll in the longer distance races. But we'll have to see what happens. But other than that, the big change here is you've kind of got two tournaments stacked on top of each other. Top 192 like we had the last time, but then also the next 192 get in. Only 1 week qualifying period starting November 17th, or really for East Coast or West Coast, US, a little bit earlier on the 16th. And then the other big change, which I'm not going to cover in a ton of detail because I really want to kind of figure out how placement rates compare to this average scoring breakdown. But the way they're doing this, I think, is rather than placement percent, they're doing based on your average points from all of your races across all of your distances. So obviously, if you're finishing first in 20 of your races, you're going to have a pretty high average, but you're going to end up in class one very quickly. If you are, finishing middle, you're going to have a slightly lower average. But in the end, if you're first and 12th, your average points kind of puts you in between second and third here. So just keep that in mind. We will probably, we are probably going to do another stream to talk a little bit more about this, to talk a little bit more about the Digital Breeders' Cup that I mentioned. Yeah, Pez, I think you're referring to BG's tweet today or maybe last night about horses ending up in class 5 if you kind of proactively or pro forma their point distribution based on the changes. I haven't dug into that, so I don't really want to speak to his analysis. But if you think about it, it does make some sense because to your point, 70% of horses or more are not profitable. And so those horses that are finishing in the middle or in the bottom are going to kind of move their way down a little bit better than they previously did. So yeah, you should have more horses that are viable. I do think it causes some issue with kind of mid-level, upper-level racers, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see. I don't want to cover that in too much detail, but it is a good segue away from the tournament. So the other change they announced, obviously, and I don't have a visual for this one, is they said first, second, and third were 6 points instead of 4 points instead of 3, and 2 points instead of 1. 2 points instead of 2, but then no pity point anymore. And then 7 through 12 is all a loss of 2 points instead of the pyramid kind of structure, inverse pyramid structure they had before. A lot of debate there. Again, I don't want to cover that in too much detail, but again, just wanted to mention it on stream to make sure you guys heard it here as well as everywhere else. You've probably read about it. Hey, Lucky, what's going on? So very interesting. We'll have to take a look. Again, I'm not sure if Pezza was specifically referencing BG's tweets, but BG did some analysis on the net effect on certain horses. A lot of you horses will end up in class 2 and class 1 pretty quickly, but we will. We're gonna dig in and kind of see how the racing environment reacts. I personally think that a lot more horses will be raceable, and it could open up class 1 and class 2 to have a little bit more action as well. But I do think some fee changes are going to be needed as horses kind of move around the pyramid. So, yeah. So definitely, yeah, go check out BG_alt on Twitter. He's got a couple posts on that. And he's a great follow anyway. A bunch of statistical analysis there. if you haven't followed him already. Hey Dragnet, what's going on, man? So we've talked a little about the new tournament. We've talked a tiny bit about the class structure. I did want to make sure, obviously you guys have seen Golden Glow. I'm not sure how much other streams are talking about it. I know it's been mentioned here and there. I need to tweet out about it. I haven't had a chance to do that. And Golden Glow, I apologize for that, man. I know you've been, really working hard on getting that set up. So basically, what that is, and again, Golden Glow, if you're still around and you want to drop in the link, either to the OpenSea collection or, any other, the site, I think you have a standalone website set up. I'm happy to pull that up, but otherwise I can speak to it and then we can talk more about it, either this weekend or next week. Are we back? Hopefully we're back. Looks like we're back. Sorry about cutting out there. Was talking about the Digital Breeders' Cup a little bit. Golden Glow Master has done a ton of work, the last couple months. I was talking about the Digital Breeders' Cup, and if you have a link, you can drop in chat, and I can pull that up on screen so we can talk a little bit about it. But either way, I was saying, Golden Glow has done a ton of work on it. You basically, it's a bigger version, sexier version of some of the pony plug tournaments. You buy a token that's specifically for the bloodline and breed type of your horse, and then there's a bracket based on those bloodlines and breed types. You get a few races to test your horse, and then you can enter it. So it's not as restrictive as the maiden where you have to enter an unraced horse. You do get a little bit of discovery, but you still have to be pretty early on in the horse's life. And your horse specifically gets entered to run against kind of other horses. So let me. I won't cover this in a ton of detail, but for those of you in the Discord, I will drop this into our Discord under under the tournaments, so you can take a look at it there. Good point, Connor Greg. I believe for this one you have to own the mother. Correct me if I'm wrong, Golden Glow. You have to own the mother, and then Golden Glow drop the token. So in addition to owning the mother, you have to breed it yourself, and then you have to have the token that matches to your horse, and that gets you in. And the fees are actually, so you've got points here, which is just a kind of a graduated linear scale. There's a separate kind of sectional for your lower end breed types. And then the fees for entering are, based on both the bloodline and the breed type. And so you've got kind of different graduated fees for legendaries, exclusives, elites, and then any crosses and pacers are at that lowest $40 level. So you really get a benefit from finding and entering a quote unquote lesser breed type in, and going from there. So sorry, Golden Glow, that was my fault. So I'm glad you're here to correct me. So and that's why I wanted to cover it in a little more detail next week. But no, that's right. So you have to breed it yourself, and obviously you have to own the horse, and then you pick up the token on OpenSea at the link that Golden Glow dropped. And so again, I just wanted to quickly mention it today. Golden Glow, I think you're kicking off races, or we're kicking off races December 1st, or first thing in December. So we've got a few weeks and through the holidays to kind of get horses all set up for this. We're going to talk a little bit more about it. Yeah, perfect. December 2nd. So definitely keep an eye out. A little bit of information out there. We're going to get some stuff updated in the Discord. Jump in there if you're not in already and take a look at that. And then, I don't want to volunteer Golden Globe, but I'm sure he'd be happy to answer any questions on Twitter or on Discord, or reach out to me or CJ, and we'll track down some answers for you as well. So, so that's what we've got going on for kind of a quick tournament update. And yeah, Dragnet, you're one of 5 Aussies in here, so and there are no Europeans because it's 4 a.m. for them. So no, it's December 2nd. Yeah, absolutely. Golden Glow, guys, check out their stream, ZED News Network on Sundays. We've talked a little about them before. CJ and I have been on their stream before, last month or a couple months ago. They've got a really good stream, podcast style, kind of interview style, that they do. So check that out on Sunday. And then he pops up on other streams as well. And then, like he said, check him out on Sean Versall. I know Sean's doing some weekend streaming as well. So keep an eye out, and we'll go from there. And then we've also talked a little bit about the zombie tournaments as well. And we've got, I think, Joe and the crew have a couple more tournaments coming down the pike as well. So plenty of tournament action for people to get into. I know they've got another maiden tournament coming up later. So think about, breeding for this one, and then breeding for the next one as well. We should have some good stuff going on in addition to anything else that Zed continues to roll out. So that's right, Matt. I try to laugh a little bit, but not too much. Hey, Callie, what's going on? Golden Goal. I actually haven't thought too much about it, brother. I haven't bred this month. I am likely going to breed, but I have very little liquidity. And so I've got to kind of be selective. I think I've got a handful of unraced that I could potentially tap into. I don't really sell much, so kind of purposeful. So I don't really worry about not having horses to run in tournaments, but I've got to figure out if I want to purposely breed a horse in the next month for this thing, or what I want to do. So that's something that we'll cover. I'd like to cover next stream, talk about the different tournaments and talk about different strategies for that. So to keep a lookout for that, maybe this weekend or more likely next week. But good question, Golden Glow. And I'll pop into y'all's chats if you're talking about it, and once I've had a chance to think about it a little bit more. But hey, we've got 3 weeks to buy a token and get everything planned out. Probably not going to run many horses in the upcoming ZED tournament. So, most of what I have is pretty average horses, kind of grinders, some natural use, some distance preference horses that are just going to get knocked out in the quarterfinals anyway. So it's, we'll see. We'll have to, we'll have to get a stream going before the tournament starts next week to talk about potential strategies for the Fibonacci Cup, and then, the ongoing tournaments from there. So keep an eye out for that. So kind of breaking from all of that, I think I've covered the last thing that I wanted to cover, if you guys hadn't seen, which I think is really cool, nothing too crazy, obviously, but turn that on. Nothing too crazy, but they did update the horse pages on the ZED site. So you have a little bit more information here. You have very similar to what you had before, but you have the class and the class points, which wasn't on the horse page before. It was only on the stable page. You have a little bit more information on the horse stats. And then something new here is the last races that the horse ran. And then the performance by distance. So this is position 1st through 12th at each distance. And then the brighter green you have here is where the placements are concentrated. So for this specific horse, he's got some firsts and seconds at 1,000, some firsts and seconds and thirds at 2,000. Not a lot of great performances at 2,400, but this could be a little cleaner. But I really like how they're kind of adding to the horse pages. I think it's a pretty cool thing. And then this one, I believe it goes back to maybe mid-October. I don't remember the exact date, but it shows your class rating. So this guy hasn't run for a couple months. And so there's no class points, but it shows kind of the similar chart to what's on Know Your Horses on that used to be tracking your class points. And then down below, something, no major changes to the offspring, but shows the parents and the offspring. And it looks like they've corrected this average wins to be a weighted average, but I didn't do the math. So don't hold me to that. Yeah, Callie, the colors, I'm not sure exactly when they updated, but the class colors definitely did change. I don't think the horse colors have changed that much. There was a little bit of an uproar when they changed some of the horse colors a few months ago. But hey, Deanetti, what's going on? So that was that. Not a huge thing, but wanted to make sure you guys saw that in case you didn't go into your stables or onto your individual horse pages too much. One question. So, that's my ZED update portion of the show. One question I did want to answer, before we move on to the tools, the main kind of content portion today. Motherload, it's you ask a good question. Obviously, the first tournament, there were a lot of low Z's that made it into the tournament rounds. I think you're going to have a similar kind of long distance skewed, low Z skewed tournament again for now. But we have to remember that the ZED tournaments are, they ran the first one. It ran pretty well. And then this is their second one, and it's saying, okay, what if we want to do a weekly tournament? And then they're adding more horses to that as well. So, I think part of it is adding more horses. And so and then part of it is changing the scoring system a little bit. It'll probably skew it a little bit more to top three the horses that finish in the top three a lot, which are going to tend to be your lower Z's. But this is just the beginning, right? Eventually we should have bloodline tournaments and breed type tournaments and color tournaments and all the types of stuff that the zombie guys are doing. I think will at some point be adopted back into the ZED platform for different people to run. To Heroin's points, what's going on, Heroin? There are 2 tiers, so you have twice the number of horses that are getting in, and it should expand that range out to a lot of higher Z, especially sprinters and distance runners that have to be managed a little bit more than your lower Z horses. And then any of these other tournaments, the community run tournaments, they're not always dominated by low Z runners, and especially this Breeders' Cup, the Digital Breeders' Cup that you'll hear more about this month. It's focused on kind of bred horses, and then it's split up into different brackets. So you'll see Buterins get to have their own kind of battlegrounds, and so just keep an eye out for that. Again, we're still early, right? So it's all about making sure the tournaments work and then figuring out how to better balance things. And so there might be some growing pains, like you mentioned, in these initial ones, but I think the developments are generally positive. So. And again, I mean, you saw Z17 Legendary or Z19 Legendary in the grand finals. It didn't do too well, but it had to win. It won almost 2 ETH on the way there. So, it just because it's focused right now on some of those horses. In the scheme of things, there's $100,000 worth of races, paid races or more in a week. And so just because some of these early tournaments are, favoring some of the lower Z horses, yes, in the short term, it's frustrating. But I think it's setting up for better things in the long term. So, let's see. Yeah, Callie. I mean, that's kind of what I was saying on the, kind of adjusting tournaments gradually, rather than changing things drastically. Again, I think Zed has shown that they're willing to listen to the community. And so while there were a couple of changes they didn't make to this one, I think the changes are generally positive. But yeah, Tussie, that's right. You and me both. I've got enough donkeys that I found through these last few tournaments between the Maiden and the 100 and a couple other ones that I've got my 5th through 8ths lined up to dominate the next the next donkey tournament or two. So we'll see what that looks like. That's exactly right. Whether it's another donkey tournament from Zombie Racing or whether we have CJ and I haven't really talked about setting up tournaments, so it's not going to be us in the near future. But maybe we can organize a community tournament, another community tournament, talk to some of the guys that do that a little bit more often than we do, and go from there. But appreciate the questions, guys. I think this is a good discussion. I completely understand the concerns. I know, CJ has expressed his concerns about the focus on kind of long distance runners. Others have kind of talked about the favoring of Z1 through Z4s to a larger extent. But again, you had several examples of high quality bred horses getting through, and then even multiple Buterin legendaries making the semifinals and the finals. But shifting gears a little bit. Again, we'll cover the tournaments in more detail. We'll stream more and more about that. And so, really wanted to talk to you guys about tools. Obviously, there are a ton of community tools that have grown. I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 or 6 of the biggest ones, or the kind of ones you guys probably hear a lot about. I'm also going to talk a little bit about the plugins that exist. Won't get into a ton of detail there, but I'll at least show you. There's some days I actually use both of them at the same time, and it gets a little bit busy. Some days I use neither. So we'll talk a little bit about each. I wanted to start with the 2 that you guys are probably most familiar with. The first one being Haku. We had a stream a couple weeks ago with Cryptog, and he talked about some fundraising that they've done, some kind of midterm to long-term goals that they have, some projects that they're working on. He wants to build out kind of a standalone secondary market, which is fantastic, I think. And so, Haku got its start, as many of you know, as a market tool back in the summer. I want to say maybe even late May, mid to late May. It was basically this page you see here, but not in dark mode. So there you go. And it listed every horse that was listed on OpenSea. And so it pulls the data directly from OpenSea. And guys, I know you guys, a lot of you guys know a lot of the detail here, but I am going to kind of do a little bit of a beginners because again, we haven't been great about pulling over our content to YouTube, but we want to get this kind of carved out and pulled over to YouTube to talk about tools, to talk about different stuff. So keep an eye for that. But just giving you a heads up that some of this stuff you guys probably already know, but I want to make sure I cover more than less, especially on some of these more popular ones. So the homepage, when you click, it goes straight to the listings. It shows you the most recent horse listed, how recently it was listed, and all the stats. So this has changed a good bit, but it shows, the color, whether that's rare or not, whether it's unraced, and then the win percent, the show percent, the number of races, and then it also shows the freeze. So the important thing to remember here is anytime you're looking at stats on Haku, he doesn't have the free races in the charts or in the overall stats that he's showing. He does have the free races listed in the race list, so you can go back and look at the race history. But just keep in mind that no free races here, and then free races on Know Your Horses, which I'll show you next. So in San Angeles, let me cover some of these tools, and then if you don't mind sticking around, I can maybe answer some questions at the end. High level, I think legendaries are incredibly cheap right now. Not financial advice, never is, but let me come back to that, and I'll try to answer that question along with any other ones that we have at the end of the stream. So appreciate you dropping in though. So here, we're talking about listings. We've got the stud finder here, which rest in peace, ZED Nucleus and Remy's project. But ZED Nucleus was the first kind of market research tool we had, stud finder that we had some great information, lets you filter on a lot of the same stuff. But Haku's filter is that on steroids. So the same thing as if you're searching for horses on the listing page, which is where you open to, you have all of your ability to filter by different studs that you're looking for, color if you're a color hunter, win and show percent if you have max or mins on either of those that you want to use. And then also number of races if you're looking to kind of test different theories there, and make sure you have enough races to look at the sample size. So then you have the same sorts here. You have prices, you have genotypes if you're searching across a range of genotypes, fire percent if you're looking at that, and then obviously some of these other ones are a little less relevant, but that's also kind of a great thing that he has. Again, KYH also has a stud finder. I find this one a little bit easier to use, but KYH is good as well. All horses here, similar thing, but it's not listings. So this is the entire horse database, gives you a lot of the same stats, but then lets you really filter down into what you're looking at. And so another interesting feature. And then if we look at any specific horse, and again, I'm just clicking on the first horse. So you have recently, after a lot of poking and prodding, he added race filters. So, you've got all of your different classes, all of your different entry fees, your different distances, and then dates. And then you do have an option to toggle on and off free races. But so the default is showing only paid races, which makes a lot of sense because especially if you're looking at free races for the tournaments, they're not always representative of the true performance of the horses. And so, but there is information you can find. So you've got, your different tabs, summary stats, win rate, show rate. And then he did make a change today to show 7th through 12th in line with the new points. You've got financial stats, you've got, fire stats, and then other, which is your class points per race, which I think he also added today, your average class, your average odds, which is obviously old data, and then the number of times fed. So basically, he doesn't have the speed stats here. There are other sites that will show you speed stats. But because of the change that was made August 23rd with fatigue and the shrinking of the ranges that we've covered before, the speed stats are kind of misleading to show if you're looking at standard deviations and some of the other standard speed stats, summary level speed stats that we showed before. Say that 3 times fast. So he did remove that. I know there's been some conversation about potentially adding that back, but for now, the main tab that you pull up is the summary stats, shows kind of your main race stats, your finishes, your fire by distance, your fire by class, your odds by distance. And then you have the ability to look through every race, the buy-in level, the date of the race, and then dig into the details as well, which gives you kind of your average flames for the bucket that they're in, any average odds if they have that data, and then kind of shows the finishing and all that. So again, that's a big that's a big chunk of what Haku has. So major focus on the market and being able to filter the market and all the listings on OpenSea. His interface coordinates directly with the OpenSea API to pull those listings, very quickly. And then he has other features in here, stud finder, all horses. And then the last thing I'll call out is the feeder board. Every time you click on a horse link, you can go in and feed that horse. There is a debate on if feeding influences your horse performance. But, all joking aside, it's a good way to track kind of what horses are being looked at, or who's kind of most active on the site as well. And so there are some funny prompts there when you do feed a horse that you can take a look at. So definitely check all that out. But that's kind of my overview of Haku. Split pretty evenly between a market tool and a racing tool at this point. And I think we'll see a lot of the market features continue to be built out. The secondary market, I think Cryptog is actively working on standalone market, and so there's a lot of good stuff to come there. So any questions on Haku before I move on? Take no questions as go ahead and move on, but we can obviously come back to it. So know your horses is the next one I wanted to cover. And again, so Haku does have its own Twitter. You can follow that. Cryptog posts some stats there. Tussy, we can walk through what KYH does. And then people can make their own decisions. I'm a market guy. I'm not as much of a racing guy. I'm a market guy and kind of overall environment guy. So I've always used Haku a little bit more. But as far as horse analysis goes, there are some features on Know Your Horses that I'll walk through that are pretty positive. So let's look at that. And nice, mother. Good luck, man. So Know Your Horses pulls up. I think depending on your browser settings, it's either going to be light or dark. I have dark mode enabled on whatever sites will allow it to be enabled. So it pops up automatically in dark mode for me. A couple of different search bars you can hop right in. And so, if we do that, I think overall KYH is mainly a racing research tool versus a market research tool, but there is overlap between the two. So again, a lot of similar stats, but laid out in a very different manner. And so you've got kind of a horse overview, and then racing overview with a snapshot of a lot of your main racing stats in one place rather than across different tabs. And then, you've got, one thing I have grown to like is the layout. I had my own issues when they changed the site to be, to have all these kind of drop downs and things like that, and the filters all built into the button. And I'm sure you guys had your own issues as well. But I'm also a desktop user, so I think it's a little bit easier, desktop and laptop user, so it's a little bit easier to get used to. Mobile is, for me at least, still a little bit finicky because you've got to like double tap lists and menus and things like that. But I think overall they do have a lot of cool stuff. So, you've got placement charts, you've got odds charts for horses with odds, obviously, and then the heat charts, a little bit more compact, a little bit easier to see. And then you've got all your kind of different racing data, very similar layout to what Haku has. The one cool thing that I think that KYH does that Haku doesn't on the racing data is this differentiation between kind of heat by class and then heat by class by distance. That's something that KYH has always had. That Haku has the marathon fire, which is useful, right? But this really, especially if you're watching open races on KYH, this allows you to kind of track a little bit better if you're not using the plugins, which horses are doing what. So that's one useful thing on here. So we talked a little about the horse overview. They do have kind of a racing setup where you can kind of look at all of the different finished races, all the different scheduled races, and then open races. And for a while, and I would argue probably still is, this is probably the best open race tool that I know of off-site or outside of a plugin. So you can go in here and filter for any class, any distance, and then any entry fee or whatever range of entry fees you want to go into the race and see, the same fire percentages or flame or heat or whatever you want to call them before the race. The only thing that doesn't show up on those race summaries is kind of the fatigue information. And so this shows last 12 and last 3 hours, so you can get a little bit of an idea of what the stamina might be and how the horse is doing there. You do have a market functionality here. Again, Haku's kind of defaults right to the market, whereas KYH defaults to a horse search page to jump right into the market, the stats. Pretty similar setup here. You do have a lot of filters, a lot of similar filters. Again, I'm not going to go through all of this. I do. This is one thing that I just noticed. I do like that that they actually have a color group filter. Because again, if you're a color breeder like some of us are, I still struggle to balance implementing our theories with trying to pull super coats and breed within color groups and stuff like that. So that's a pretty cool feature that KYH does have that I don't think Haku does. And then both sites kind of show sales data, so you can filter down. Haku only shows 2 weeks. I'm not sure how much sales data that this shows, but given this is 140,000 sales, that's got to be a good portion of it, maybe since May, because I know a lot of the KYH data is since May. So that's interesting. Same thing with the stud farm. Again, I like the Haku setup a little bit better on the stud farm and listing side, but there is a lot of similar stuff here, a lot of ability to sort, and then hop right in, viewing ancestry and hopping right into the horses on Zed as well once you click in. And so again, though, the most interesting thing for me that I use KYH for is the race analysis, a little bit more so. If I'm looking at an individual horse, so let's look at something special, for example. Once you click into an individual horse, and I know this is a little bit small, guys, so apologies for that. You have an overview, which is what we were seeing. You have a drill down page, which you click on, and it gives you the ability to filter for class and distance and dates and buy-ins. And so, you can look at something special only running in class 1 and class 2, which is going to be basically all of its races. But that drill down button gives you a little bit more functionality on the overview. You have what I think is the most important thing that KYH has, and I use it all the time, is this horseshoe function. And so this horseshoe shows you your placements across distances. Hey, CLP, what's going on? This horseshoe shows you your placements across distances. So all of your distances, number of races, and heat percentage. And so you can see visually on one page, how am I doing at different distances? And here it's like, all right, well, 23 wins out of 66 races at 1,000 and 30 wins out of 102 races at 1,400. That's pretty good. But most importantly, you can also filter this down. So you can look at only paid races. And that's an important thing that I should have called out earlier. All the KYH data includes all races. So tournament races, tournament free races, and paid races as well. And so, again, there is good data available or data that you can use available in the free races. But generally, when you're looking at performance of a horse and where it's flaming, before where the odds, paid races were a good bit more reliable. And so usually I'll look at both. But usually I will, I'll look at filter down to paid races pretty immediately on KYH. So keep that in mind. And yeah, Callie, I used to manually download Sigma Stables Excel files for each of my horses daily and update them that way in an Excel spreadsheet, even when Know Your Horses was still building out their platform, and Haku was early on and still had a lot of horse stats, and ZED Stats was still around. I was using that data myself and had a spreadsheet and all that. But with these tools out there, and then the ability to download your whole transaction history, I stop doing that, just because between this horseshoe and some of the other tools that the drill down that I showed you, the filters that Haku has gone over, and then if you're a speed person, I'll show you a couple things and kind of warn you about that. But yeah, it's it's pretty crazy, some of these things that the the community resources have kind of built out. And so that's why we wanted to have a stream to call. A lot of us use them, but to the extent that you guys don't know certain features or don't know certain things to look at, that was kind of the point of this stream, was to call some things out, and hopefully this will help you guys race your horses a little bit better. So oh yeah, I love Excel, so don't even get me started on that path. We'll have to do Excel classes on my personal channel at some point, because I know that CJ won't be supportive of that. So, but that's a whole different topic for a different night. So, so we've talked about horseshoe, we've talked about drill down. Charts are just some similar information, the 4 charts. And then the interesting thing here is your profitability, by horse, or for each horse. So this shows you your amount of ETH made and the number of races. And there are a couple other things here. I feel obligated to show you guys speed. So it's almost impossible, I'm sure, to see with dark mode on. But these speed charts show you the green is the total overall population average, and then the black, which is probably not very visible on your screens, but hopefully you guys can kind of see it. The black is the horse that you're looking at. And so you've got kind of the green shapes here, and then again, the flatter your curve is, it means the more distributed your speed is, so the higher your variance is generally. But again, CJ and I don't really use these charts. There are enough horses that end up with good U charts or good winning charts where their speed is average or below average. So, take this with a grain of salt. It's an interesting resource. You can kind of see variance with the charts. You can kind of see how your speed compares to the overall population average. But unless you've got a large number of races, I'd say 30 at a distance or more, it's not going to give you even as accurate information as your placements would. And especially less than that can be fluke races, or I would be careful of using speed data for horses with less than 20 or 30 races at a distance. That said, if you are a speed person, KYH does have nice resources for the charts that show your speed, and then also this table that looks at all the races you've run and then compares, gives you all your numbers, your min, your mean, your max, and then your quartiles and your standard deviation. And you can pull that up and look at the range against the global average, which is a separate chart. And so you can kind of flip back and forth and say, okay, I have a higher standard deviation, more variance here. I have, speeds that are lower than average here, higher than average here. Again, that's only if you're a speed person. CJ and I really don't look at speed, but it's here if you want to take a look at it. So I think that covers a lot of what I wanted to cover on KYH. They do have some other tools if you are willing to connect your wallet, which I'm not going to suggest or recommend. But if you do, it is for now a read only. So just make sure if you do want to do that, to read whatever you're signing and make sure you understand that. But if you do, you can look at stable profitability since May 1st and other stable stats, breeding stats, a bunch of other stuff that's stable specific that they track based on your wallet address. So that's that. KYH, again, great racing tool. Also has some good functionality on the market and the stud side, but I would say a little less streamlined than Haku, and I use both a lot. So they're the primary two tools. Cali, there's no training or growth with age at this point. So you don't, they haven't introduced anything that, like, with 1,000 races, some horses improve or some horses decline or anything like that, or 500 or whatever. It's your horse is your horse, and the discovery is figuring out what the distance preference is and where it competes best. So, but that's not to say they might, they could change. There's some lore in the ZED guide about different color horses having different preferences and things like that. So there could be changes, but at least for now, no color preference or racing advantage for different colors or different changes for colors, and then no aging or improvement for horses at this point. So next one I wanted to cover, again, if you have any questions about Haku or KYH, drop them in. So let me know if you have any questions there. Next one I wanted to jump into is MJ's platform. So I was hoping to have him on stream. He's been pretty tied up. I know he was actually streaming earlier. If he's not still streaming, looks like he's off. Couldn't hop on, but we are hoping to get him on at some point. Maybe we can do a deeper dive on this. He's got a great platform here. MJ Informatics is the platform that he's set up. Everything is running, pulling data and then running through a Tableau output that he's set up. And so you've got Zetalytics, which lets you search for any horse. So I'm going to put my horse in. Let's see if it's working tonight. So you've got Zetalytics, which is kind of the main horse analytics page. And so here, again, I know it's a little bit small, but you've got all your stats by distance. You've got fire, you've got odds if you have it. You've got your buckets for win percentages and top three, middle five, and bottom four. You've got a little bit of speed data. You've got standard deviations here. And then again, I'm not going to do justice, but these are really kind of your charts, I think, showing speed variance. And so the kind of wider your distributions here, I think you're going to have a little bit more variance at those distances. And then you've got a bunch of information on flames by different classes, which again is awesome. This is a little bit more straightforward of a view. And then races by gate, which I think is great that he has it on here. I think it's unlikely that we're going to get gate preference in the game, but it's still cool to kind of take a look at this. I used to track this all the time. And then placements down here at the bottom. So this is the main page. A lot of good information for each horse. One thing I'll say, make sure that you clear out or deselect the horse that you're looking at and then reselect the next horse, because I've been caught with that before. But pretty interesting stuff here. And then the other thing that he built out recently is this state of ZED, which I think is pretty cool. And so again, it gives you a bunch of data on basically anything in the ecosystem that you could want to know. So it talks about a lot of similar stuff to the Excel files that CJ and I have had on here, talking about like horse population and stuff like that. Again, he says it's not perfectly live, but I think he does keep this relatively updated. So this was last updated on Tuesday. So I think he was working with, it looks like he's working with Cryptog and Haku to pull some of this data in. And so you've got, breed type and the numbers. You've got the percent winners, the percent win rate by breed type, by bloodline. And then you've got, what is this? So fire distribution. This is interesting. I hadn't seen this. So fire distribution by place. And so as you can see, as we've talked about a little bit, which this kind of shows, your extreme distances, your 1,000, your 24, your 26, most of your flames, because it's so driven by distance preference, are in the top 3 or 4, right? Same thing here. And then if you actually look at 1,600, which we think there's no distance preference, you actually see your highest percentage of flames in 11th and 12th. And again, that's just representational of the importance of variance, and also the fact that higher variance horses will tend to have flames and finish in the bottom couple places, or bottom 3, or however you want to look at it, more often. So that's one way to look at it. It's not always a negative distance roll, and in fact, when you're looking at these middle distances, it's really not possible to be a negative distance roll. It has to be, high variance and potentially some base ability. Again, he does have some speed stats here. I would say that from what I've seen, the standard deviation of speed for each class is 0.9. And so the difference between, 60.57 and 59.9 is less than 1 standard deviation. So you kind of draw your conclusions, however you want to draw your conclusions. But he does have some interesting data here, some interesting charts to take a look at. So again, I'm sure that he could talk a lot more about Zetalytics and a lot more about what all you can do with his tool. And we'd like to have him on at some point soon to talk about that. But definitely, guys, jump on and take a look at mjinformatics.com and what MJ's kind of put together, because it's pretty cool stuff. So next one that I wanted to go over was ZedRun.tools, which was another one of the kind of OG sites that's been around for a while that not as many people necessarily use. So what I use this site for, I don't use it as much as KYH or Haku, especially KYH for racing data. But they do have a good bit of overlap data here. So if you're looking at what I'm about to show you and you want to dig into the details, you have that here. But I'm not as familiar with all of their different features, but I did want to call this out because I think it's cool. I've spent literally 100 hours or more looking at this lineage page. So I think it used to be called Bloodline or something like that. So you go directly to ZedRun.tools, and then for any of the horses, you can click lineage and take a look. Or if you want to look at, one horse that I had pulled up earlier, if you want to look at any of your horses, you go up to the search bar at the top, you put them in. If it's a bred horse, it will automatically pull up the parents. And then again, I I use this all the time. I don't use it as much anymore, but I used to use it every freaking day. And so you can actually go in and pull down all of the stats for the different children, or all the different children, all the different parents, everything, and kind of build out family trees. And so if you're looking at, if you're looking at specific bloodlines, or you find, if you're, trying to follow our breeding approach, if you find, high base ability horses, or horses that you think are high base ability, you can go in and make sure that you're seeing kind of the full tree there and figure out kind of where stats are coming from. This is much more visual. Obviously, I guess the one thing that I didn't show on KYH was the ancestry, and I apologize for that. So jumping back, and then I'll go back to ZEDRun.tools. So once you pull up a specific horse, once it's had kids, offspring, you can jump in and look at the final position distribution and the heat distribution percentage for all of the offspring of that horse. One thing I would caution you, again, a lot of distribution, a lot of position placements and heat is driven by variance and breeding preference. So just because you see a very U-shaped chart of offspring for a horse, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to continue to breed well. But you can kind of take a look at the different stats for the different kids, offspring that the horse has had, go through. And on this specific page for KYH, it has all the stats listed. But if you're visual like me, I love this visualizer where you can go through and, again, literally build out these family trees and kind of take a look. And they have a lot of the same summary stats. So they have win percent, and then they have kind of record and the best. It used to be best odds, lowest odds, and the distance that they got those odds. Now it has speed stats. So again, don't love speed, but it's something that kind of shows the fastest speed of the horses. And then you can kind of build that out, and then you can dig into the individual horses. So each of these has detail buttons to go along with the parent and children buttons. And you can hop in and look at the race history and look at the distance summary. So, I really like the visualization here. It's what I primarily use ZEDRun.tools for. Again, they do have pretty similar stuff from a race stats standpoint, and financial stats and all that. And you can split between all races and paid races and all that. So definitely check that one out as well. Let me make sure. Yeah, Callie, on the noise in races, just to answer that quickly, there definitely is a ton of noise, and that's part of the reason that with the change in the speed data after August 23rd and the noise in the results, we feel like placements and flames tell a better story across 30, 40 races overall than speed stats ever will. And so that's what we're more focused on. It's really tough to isolate the noise. And even if you do, you have to feel confident that you're doing that appropriately in order for the speed stats to have relevance. So again, I don't want to go too far down that because we've talked a good bit about that. One more that I want to talk a little bit about before I jump into the plugins is Painted Ponies. They used to have a great Yeah, the 823 change was just when they implemented fatigue. It it's we're still trying to figure out kind of what actually happened, but it shrank the range of times significantly. And so if you're looking at the data before, you had huge variance in finishing times at 1600 or at whatever distance, and then after that, that range shrank and the quartile shrank. And so overall, you just had much less variance in the finishing times. If you give me a little bit after the stream, I can try to post a chart in Discord or track that down for you so you can see. Yeah. So painted ponies, paddock.paintedponies.racing. They, I actually, this is the first time in a little while that I've logged into this. They used to have an ELO rating system. Now it's based on fire, which I'm actually not the biggest fan of, because fire really doesn't tell you how strong a horse is. It only tells you how successful it is at running races in the distances it's best at. So it's still useful in somewhat useful, because it tells you kind of what the strongest horses in the races with high distance preference are. And it ranks, every horse, right? And so you can see here that Billions has a really high rating because of its performance in 1,000 and 1,200 meters. He has worked in the tournament races, and so since Billions was the top qualifier in the tournament race, I think that's kind of weighing this here. But you can see a lot of the horses that you expect to be the top horses do show up here, right? But a lot of these are kind of top sprinters and top long distance horses. I'm taking a look to see if there's any that pop out. Like you've got, Princess of Power here. You've got, Wavelength is a really strong long distance horse. And then the first, you actually have Valelli, or I've seen this horse all over the tracks, but the first mid distance I think is 1,800 here, at just above 2,000. So this one must have finished really highly in the tournament for the mid distance finishes. But again, interesting if you want to kind of look at kind of relative rankings. I think it had a little bit more value when it was based on kind of odds and specific race performance versus Flames, but this does have value if you want to kind of take a look through some rankings. And then I'm not super familiar with the simulator, but as far as I know, you can add a couple different horses, and based on past performance, it'll tell you the likelihood of a horse winning between those two matchups, or I think. So let's actually do this. Let's see. Yeah, cheat to win. I'll drop a couple links in a second. Is this gonna work? Maybe not. Well, so yeah. So I think basically what this shows is the Chauville rating, which again I'm not super familiar with how he's doing this, but it should be a kind of an ELO rating, a multiplayer ELO rating based on Flames. And looking at kind of the likelihood of horses beating each other based on the Chauville ratings. That said, obviously I use two high variance horses for a reason. This would say if these two were matched head to head, main event is likely to finish behind Vanilla being a good bit. But because these are two high variance horses, they could easily finish opposite sides of the spectrum. So take it with a grain of salt, but I think it's something interesting to look at. So I will drop this one in. You guys know Haku and you guys know KYH, but I'll drop in MJ's site. I will drop in ZED Run, which again, just click on the lineage for any horse or search your horse and go through that. And then I will drop in paddock ponies, painted ponies as well. ELO in Los Angeles is so ELO is traditionally, the most common usage of it is in chess. And it's basically a way to measure kind of the head-to-head ability of two players on an equal basis. So if you're looking at a number and you're looking at a chess player with an ELO rating of 2000 versus a chess player of an ELO rating with 1800, I think there's actually a percentage of time that 2000 ELO will beat the 1800. And so based on matchups, players will gain and lose points. And so when lower ELO score players beat higher ELO score, they'll gain more points than when they beat comparable players. And so there's a way to take that and implement it on a multiplayer basis across. There's actually coding literature out there for looking at a set number of players and implementing it on a multiplayer basis. And so I'm not sure if that's how Painted Ponies has set up their site, but they are on Twitter. So hit them up. I'm not sure how often they're available in, like I said, general Discord or anything like that. But definitely worth asking more there. And I know he's been a little bit more active recently, or they've been a little bit more active recently. I'm not sure if it's one guy or a couple guys. But again, interesting site. They used to have a little bit more information on specific horses. But you can kind of see the heat. You can see a lot of the racing stats. And then they do have a pretty cool little offspring. Shows you the breed type here, the Z number, and then it used to show you whether they're in stud or whether they're listed for sale. It actually does look like it still shows if they're listed for sale. So they do have some pretty cool stuff here. So definitely check it out when you have a second. But again, not as comprehensive as Haku or KYH. So, and then last but not least is Stacknox, which you guys are probably more familiar with than I am. A lot of similar. So you go to the homepage and then you enter a horse. So I pulled up LBJ Goat before we hopped on, but they have some kind of color coded stats. They look at max speed. They focus a lot on speed. So again, I don't use this one as much because of the heavy focus on speed. But interesting information in that it kind of bucketizes their placements and some cool visualizations as well. And you can sort all this by class and by distance and all that if you want to. So, but the reason that kind of a segue to looking at some of the plugins. So right now I actually have, so both KYH and Stacknox offer plugins. And so basically I know they're available on Chrome and on Brave. I'm not sure about other browsers. But you can go on and you can download the plugin if you want. Again, this isn't me recommending it. This is just me kind of showing what's out there. I do use some of the plugins sometimes I turn them off and run stuff manually. I know CJ only does manual research on his races, so he'll look through and actually research specific horses when he's trying to enter kind of bigger dollar races, and looks at, KYH to do that. Hey, bot lady, what's going on? Appreciate you dropping in. Again, not advice to go look at these plugins or to use these plugins actively or anything, but again, just want to kind of present what's out there. So if we look at any race, let's look at this one. Again, this is a little bit busy because I have both going on. But you've got when you're using StackNox, on the right side, you've got kind of a summary, and it shows all of the horses in your stable at that class. And then it shows you the summary of the first box and the second box. So the race record summary is overall record. It's, of course, that one went away. So let's pull up another one. The first box, the very small box, is the number of races that the horses run in the last, I hope, 12 hours. It might be 24. The second box is the overall race record. So percent wins, number of races run, and total flame percentages. And then the last box is the specific distance. So this is the specific distance and the specific class, the win percentage, the number of races, the flame percentage, and the kilometers per hour. Then if you look over here, if you're just using this, it'll be a little bit more spread out. If you're just using this, it'll be a little bit more spread out. This is the KYH plugin, and it shows the number of races, the overall heat, and the win and show percentage at that distance. So this is distance in class. I think this is overall distance, and that's the reason for the discrepancy. So you can see when you're looking through, so this is a $5 class 4 race. You can see one horse that's a threat at 2,000. There are 2 horses now. And then a few horses that, are not highlighted. So I think that, and some other people have said that the StackNox tool highlights speed a little bit too much, and you can see that in the site that they offer. So the red box, it trends to have more red boxes for quote unquote faster horses, which can again be highly skewed if you have fewer races. But it is helpful if you're trying to quickly enter races. You can kind of look. For me, if I'm using the plugins, which again, I don't use them that often, but if I am, you can quickly look here and say, okay, well, I've got a 70% heat horse, a 70% heat horse, an 86% heat horse. This is a pretty strong race. And again, the issue that I have is sometimes the high heat is not necessarily highlighted in yellow or red. But you can balance the number of races the horses run with all of the different stats that these plugins are offering. I don't necessarily kind of say that one is better than the other. KYH doesn't kind of visually move you to races. StackNox is interesting in that regard because it shows you a little bit more information and a little bit more information focused specifically on kind of getting you to the right races and avoiding certain horses. But just be careful. Don't let this completely dictate what you're doing, because sometimes it won't highlight. Let me see if I can find a good example. Sometimes it won't highlight super strong horses. So bear with me, please. Trying to find an example. So here you've got a 65% flame, 17% win, Still 13% win here. Not nearly as much flame in class 2, but still a pretty strong horse, and it doesn't even have a yellow box. Just as an example. So, it's a good reference tool. But I would say kind of balance it with doing your own research, getting to know the horses, making sure you're comfortable with still self-identifying or identifying horses that are competitive with your horse or better or worse than your horse. Keep your own target list or keep your own enemy list, if you will. But again, relatively helpful in helping to identify strong horses that are in races, and kind of steer you toward races that you can win or races you can use to down class or whatever you want to do. So, that's kind of what I've got. I would be, remiss if I didn't talk about some of the old tools. Again, a lot of these are still around in some form. So I mentioned Sigma stables earlier. I don't think their site is active right now. Cybertrex, what's going on? Good luck in that race. Good luck in that race. But Sigma used to have an Excel download. They used to have some cool heat charts for different classes and different distances, and some really nice visualization of data. Both of the founders kind of stepped away from the game over the summer. Golden Goal. I talked a little about ZED Run tools earlier. Specifically about the lineage, which I've probably spent 100 hours on. Sigma, not super active, but what was great for having an Excel download and having some cool visualizations. Some of that has shifted over to, like, MJ's tool has some great visualizations, and as far as charts go, both Haku and KYH have some great charts there. Zed Stats was an old tool that was pretty similar with KYH, and KYH kind of took off. Golden Glow, the race management for ZED Run tools really focuses on speed, and I'm not a big speed guy. So, if you're using a racing tool, for me, it's all about placements and flames. And so I prefer KYH and using, their speed data as sort of a extra piece of the analysis. ZED Run tools is focused a good bit more on speed. So again, if you do like speed data, check out the ZED Run tool horse pages or the race management, and then Stack Knox as well. But we're not speed guys, so I'm not gonna cover those too much. Old tools. So talked a good bit about Zed Nucleus. Wanted to shout out Remy and kind of him setting that up. And then Step Stables. They have actually kind of stepped back in, and so it'll be interesting to see what Step Stables builds out. They had one of the first full horse database tools. They still, I believe, do have the color calculator available where you can actually see different colors, the breeding combination of colors, and what the percentage chance of getting certain colors is going to be. And so I'll need to see if I can track that down, because that was a pretty cool thing. But again, I wanted to give some props for some OGs that didn't necessarily make it with kind of built out tools until now. But I hope this was really helpful in kind of laying out some of the key tools. There are other ones out there that I didn't really hit on for various reasons. But if you guys have specific questions about any of these tools, or any of the tools that I might not have mentioned, or anything else, anything that I might not know about, again, I only have so many hours per day that I can spend on Zed. So if you guys have a cool thing, mention it. So, again, hopefully this was helpful. I think I've kind of covered what I plan to cover this evening. We talked a little bit about the tournaments. I know Golden Glow, you're back in chat. We'll talk a good bit more about the Digital Breeders' Cup coming up, and then talked a little bit about obviously the new ZED tournament starting next week, and next week we'll cover more about some upcoming zombie tournaments, assuming Joe and the guys release details, more about the Digital Breeders' Cup, more about the ZED tournament. And then because this was kind of a big tools tutorial, we'll also kind of trim this out. And obviously it's not going to stream like a sexy YouTube video or anything like that. But I promise you guys, we'll work on getting more videos loaded to YouTube. This will be available for the next couple of weeks as a VOD on Twitch. And then we will definitely get it over to YouTube so that, you can share it with anybody you want to and kind of walk through the tools with them. So, but yeah, guys, I can go longer. I don't have a lot of other content, but if you have questions about specific tools, any of the other changes, anything else you want to ask me about, I can stick around for a little bit, or we can kind of see who else is on. I think Sean is on tonight, so we can look at potentially rating him in a little bit and getting you guys over to look at some ZED bets. Yeah, sorry, in San Angeles. Yes. So, exactly. First of all, appreciate you sticking around. So 1 ETH budget. Again, it's tough because the market is a little bit nuts right now. We have kind of the perfect storm of some issues with racing affecting things over the last couple of months, and things finally kind of being right. Exactly, not financial advice. We have a little bit less breeding, but still a ton of breeding over the summer once it rolled out in June. So you have a lot of legendary and exclusive horses out there in the ecosystem right now. Stable management tools, not as much. The plugin, the StackNax plugin, does kind of recommend which horses you can enter, but it's not super accurate. I don't know of any stable management tool. That's a really good question. I'll have to ask around. If anybody knows of any kind of stable management tools, feel free to drop a comment in chat. But in San Angeles, back to your question. In my mind, yeah, any Genesis horses. I mean, there's only 10,000 of there. There's okay. So two sides of that. There's still 10,000 of them to be dropped, right? So there are a lot of Finnies and Buterins still to be dropped. It's unlikely that those Buterin prices and likely those Finny prices will be increased all the way to market levels. They've never been sold at market levels. Yeah, Golden Glow. That's an interesting approach. So yeah, I would argue if you can find a Buterin that you're comfortable with, if you want to race, you're not likely to find a great racer Genesis horse for less than 1 ETH. There are going to be some deals out there, but if you want a racer, I would go more for legendaries. If you want sort of an investment or collector's value, unraced Genesis are at lower than they've been in a long time right now. If you want breeders, low Z legendary Nakas, low Z legendary Zabos, and then even like Z5 Finnies, and then Z5 and Z6 Finnies. are pretty interesting value right now. So I would probably, if you have one ETH, I'd probably throw a mix of those together and see what you come out with. Maybe one Genesis Finney, and then, a legendary Naka, and then, a couple legendary Finney or Buterin scratch offs for whatever the prices of those now, like 0.05 maybe. They're not necessarily the best breeders. They're just, you're going to be able to afford them at 1 ETH versus Nakas and Zabos. So Finnies are generally going to have better base ability than Buterins. So on the average, they'll be better breeders than Buterins. But you can find good Buterin breeders as well. You just have to, I would say, go back and watch some of our breeding content. I know some of those videos are pretty lengthy. And so, yeah, if you're just starting out, maybe Genesis Buterin, just because they're relatively cheap right now. But if you are going to stick around, the latest rumor, I don't know if it's been officially confirmed by Zed, but the latest rumor is that the next drop won't be until Q1 2022. So we've still got several months until that. And so, definitely kind of weigh that in if you want to, quote unquote, invest in Genesis now versus spending money elsewhere and then trying to get horses in the next drop. Who knows what that drop is going to look like, whether they're going to use a queue system, whether it's going to be similar to previous drop formats. I doubt it. So it's probably unlikely that you're going to get more than one or two horses in that drop whenever it is, if any at all. But yeah, in my mind, legendary Nakas and Zabos are super cheap right now, incredibly cheap. I don't know if prices will continue to go down. People are trying to get liquidity because of how much Ethereum has run up, and there's been some concerns in the market generally. That said, we have seen, I've posted some charts here and there. We have seen the market really flatten out and stop dropping from an average price perspective and average daily volume, especially the last 4 days. This whole week, we've actually seen a pretty nice little bump in volume and average price, which can be kind of manipulated. But in general, I think the market has been a little bit stronger. So that was my long-winded way of answering that question of, there's a lot of value out there right now. I would just kind of do your research, do as much research as you can, decide. The biggest thing is deciding what you want to do with your stable, whether you want to race, which I'd recommend, whether you want to breed, whether you want to collect, whatever your strategy is, breed racers. Those different things will kind of influence what you want to do. And once you kind of decide that, definitely jump into our if you want, jump into our Discord, and whether it's in beginner questions or ZED general or our general chat, wherever. And the link is down below the video. You can click on that. The little header will bring you directly there. Jump in our Discord. Once you kind of think about your strategy, feel free to ask a little bit more, and we can dig in with you a little bit more. So, let me catch up on questions, because I just kind of rambled there for 10 minutes. I hope that was helpful, Los Angeles. I appreciate you sticking around tonight, and I appreciate the support, man. And I don't hate Golden Glow's idea of a bunch of Z2 and Z3 legendary Nakas. I mean, that's you're not going to find a bunch of probably great competitive C1 and C2 racers in there, but you could build a pretty strong stable pretty quickly. Cheat to win the Genesis stable stuff. CJ and I have been pretty busy with work and other stuff. And Rob has been as well. Rob has at least one day job, if not multiple. We are still talking with him. and if you notice, he actually ran one of his Genesis horses in the New York City races the other day. So that was pretty cool to see. I think he's working on some stuff with the KYH guys to run some of his horses. And I know CJ has been racing a few of his bred horses as well. So we're trying to build out the data set there. And we will hopefully over the next few weeks or so, you'll start to see some of that. I know there hasn't been a lot of movement on our side in the last month or two, but appreciate your guys' patience there. And definitely keep an eye out for that. We'll keep you guys updated. As we go. But it's just taking a little bit longer for us to get rolling with him. So yeah, Civil, that definitely is a strategy. Talking about the tournaments, we talked a good bit about them earlier. Unraced definitely seems to be an interesting strategy, especially starting in some of the lower classes and working your way up. It's for lack of a better word, ballsy, because you don't know what you're getting. It's a gamble, right? But or if you can identify a horse very early on in its career that has potential, that shows potential for distance preference or is potentially a strong racer, then it's maybe worth picking those up too and trying to use those for the tournament. Hey LJ, what's going on? Lucky Jack, man. Appreciate you dropping in. Yeah, Sharky's a great dude. Yeah, first time chat. I'm surprised at that. I thought you dropped in before, but definitely appreciate you dropping in, man, and catching up. But yeah, Sharky Rob's a great dude, and definitely if you guys have a chance, we do have our interview with him posted to YouTube. Go check it out. We walk through his website and all the stuff that he's doing. He's got breeding deals going. He's got sales deals. Again, we haven't collabed with him on a lot of stuff, but we're going to continue to work on that. And so keep an eye out for that. And so, yeah, Snooze, what's going on, man? I haven't talked about the shirt at all. We've mentioned it. We've mentioned it before. But if you go to Stable Swag, Retro Racing got us set up with, and his guys got us set up with some swag. So I've got the little T-shirt on. I've got the mug. We don't get any of this money, but to the extent you like our logo and want to pick something up, feel free to hop on there and grab a hat or a mug or something like that. So drop that link in. Callie, I'm gonna need to check out this horse at some point. I'm not gonna do it on stream tonight, but definitely you seem to be up on your Samus horse. So I'll have to take a look at that and see what we're working with there. But all right, guys, I think I appreciate you joining tonight. Keep an eye out again. Rewatch this video back if you have any questions about the tools. Jump in our Discord if you haven't already. Please, if you're not following, follow the channel. We'll do something for 500 follows on Twitch, and then sub on YouTube. It doesn't cost you anything to sub on YouTube, but any little bit, if you go watch some of those videos, we've got our breeding video up, we've got some racing strategy videos, we've got the Sharky Rob interview that I mentioned, and we're going to keep pulling over content, this tools video soon. So keep an eye out for that. And then we'll be back soon with a bunch of tournament coverage, you know, and all the cool stuff that we've got going on with Zed. So appreciate the support, guys. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and try to raid over to Sean. Let me pull that up and figure out how to do that. So definitely stick around for the raid, guys. Again, appreciate you joining me tonight. We'll get CJ back soon, but I think you guys like him a little bit less anyway. We're going to go over and talk to Sean, and check out some Zed bets with him. They're a little bit different than I am, than CJ and I are. A little bit less informational, a lot more fun from a racing perspective and betting perspective. So take a look at that. If you're on desktop, just follow over. You don't have to click on anything. If you're on mobile, make sure you join the raid. But again, really appreciate everybody joining tonight, and we'll see you again soon. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.